All right, David Rivers here, partner of the Palomar Group for another episode of the Palomar Perspective. The Palomar Group is an investment sales firm based out of Augusta, Georgia that covers the Southeast. Couldn't be more excited today to have Tom Falatko with CIM on. Tom has been in the industry for 30 plus years, is a great friend of ours throughout his career, has acquired close to 10 million square feet in assets, totaling about $3 billion. Tom works on both the disposition and acquisition side. At CIM, typically has a really full plate in that he's sourcing deals, putting debt together on deals, handling the due diligence, getting it to the closing table, and then tasked with executing on whatever that strategy is for that deal. So Tom, first off, hopefully you and the family are doing well and are safe as we deal with this quarantine and COVID crisis.
Yep, everyone's safe. I appreciate you reaching out and having the opportunity to visit about what's happening in our market during this unusual time.
Sure. And Tom, you're a graduate from the Virginia Polytechnical Institute, is that correct?
Yep, did my undergraduate work at Virginia Tech and then went on to get a master's degree at Johns Hopkins through their real estate program.
Okay, well, but John Hopkins, congratulations, Virginia Tech. Sorry about that. Go Who's.
I know.
So we'll jump right into it, Tom. The first segment is what we call the underwriting. Underwriting of deals is where you really get to know the asset, the property, and get to know it better. So in this segment, it's a little chance to pull back the curtain on Tom Falatko to get to know you a little bit better. You have been in this industry and well entrenched in it for 30 plus years. Real simple. What do you love about it?
Well, I always loved, I say there's science and art. What I mean is in the underwriting process, the science or is the math. It's basically just taking the components of that cash flow, the leases, the expense side, and as you're looking at a potential acquisition, hey, does this line up? It's like a puzzle. Do all the leases jive with the Argus? And so you're going through just the analytical or the science part. Does this make sense? Does the leases match the cash flow? Let's look at the expenses. And so that's the analytical science part. The art of it is, well, the assumptions, who's going to stay, who's going to make it. And then, as things have changed in our industry, tenant sizes, do we have the right footprint for this tenant? Do we have to underwrite downsizing? So that's the art. How good can you make assumptions as you're modeling on a go-forward basis? And that's always the challenge. Hey, are we underwriting this correctly? Is the rent too high for this specific tenant? So that's the fun part. So that's what I really like, is really figuring out this puzzle to come up with an accurate representation of the cash flow.
I love that. And with the deal you buy, there's no hiding from it because you own it. You all constantly check the performance, so you are held accountable in real-time data on, hey, these are the assumptions we made. These are the returns we wanted to hit. Here's who we assumed would stay and where the rent would get to. And 3 years later, Tom, have we executed on that strategy?
Right. And to a further point about it, which is interesting, is as you engage others in your organization, be property management or leasing, you always have to challenge leasing because they're going to your point, is live with those assumptions. So do they want to, I always kid them. I was like, you guys put the bar in the ground so you can step over it,
Yeah.
Because the returns look terrible. The same with property management. You can't overburden this property with huge expenses. So there's this, I call it tension between your partners in the operation side and leasing side. So you have to actually manage. I always say manage my own constituents. That's on, sometimes as the outside world, if we're trying to buy a deal, they don't see that as, and I don't want to say it's a struggle, but it's basically it's collaboration, but it's gently getting everyone to a point where you're creating a realistic operating budget. So, you can, to your point, in 3 years, have we met that? And you don't want to say, wow, we overshot leasing by 20%. And so I was like, well, we have to revisit, why did we miss? If we were so under the market, and the inverse, were we so, below the market? So that's also something that's a dynamic that I don't think a lot of people think about.
Sure. Okay, so as you know, Palomar has a few events a year. They're typically uh, organized around golf. While you're not a big golfer, you're more of a water sport, extreme sport enthusiast, which I think is great. If you were to plan your ideal trip, what activity would that trip be centered around, and where would it be?
I would say, Palomar could consider this in the future as like maybe a Costa Rica trip, because there is golf. So the guys that want to golf, but there's big surfing, and there's also like white water rafting, zip lining. So there's a lot of fun. So that could be, my recommendation. But one of the things I've got to compliment you and the group on is having these events. I know it's expensive. It's hard to get people to commit the time, but as an industry, we're all competitive. Everyone wants to get the deals, but I think there's a lot of collaboration, and those type of events build that. And it's those connections, that you can use, as a resource as you're, down the line. So having these social events, I think there is a real purpose to them, not only building camaraderie, it's business development for you guys, but it's also, I think it's extremely helpful for the clients that to get to come.
Well, and and that's a big, that's a big motivation for it. You guys are similar to us in that you go on those trips and you're with competitive acquisition guys and REITs and whatnot, but it is a big sandbox we play in. What we have found, particularly on the broker side, the more brokers we have really good rapport with and can collaborate with, well, the better we all are for it. There are a lot of deals out there. Like I say, we always do say it's a big sandbox we play in, and the more relationships we can have, the better off we are. The broader our book of business is, and the more guys we can lean on for intel and whatnot. And we love having great relationships with competitive brokers, because we really don't look at them as competition. We more look at them as peers and guys that can help us out. All right, there's been a lot of talk, Tom, about people hoarding goods. Assuming the Falatko family has shopped for everything they need, and Tom is driving home his last day from the office and can get one stop to buy one good, what would that good be?
Probably a good rum to keep under the sink in the kitchen to get us through.
Great.
I'm a former Eagle Scout and Boy Scout, so the house is generally, I like to be prepared. So generally we're pretty well stocked with stuff to get by. So we weren't in that much of a crisis mode, as things developed, we sort of saw, hey, we may end up, being stuck in the home for a while. So we stocked up on not only the normal stuff, the food, but also activities for our kids and things like that to try to diverse them. As I mentioned, we also got a new puppy. So that's been a big diversion, and getting everyone out for walks quite a bit. So that's been helpful.
You've got everybody's at home. Everybody, you can keep them focused, all hands on deck. So you get everybody a good chance to train that dog.
Yep.
All right, with the COVID crisis going on, how are you guys handling and addressing issues that have come up with, say, tenants, lenders, just overall operations of shopping centers?
Sure. I think, each day it's an evolution. And, we're taking it sort of, I won't say day by day, but programmatically dealing with tenants issues. Obviously, lots of tenants discussing rent relief, how we can partner with them to enable them to kind of get through this choppy waters and get on the other side and reopen, be successful. So there's a ongoing dialogue on that front. Operationally, we're looking at, hey, is there a way to trim cost without diminishing the shopper experience as they are, in a lot of places, very limited, interaction at the centers. We do have a lot of power centers, so a lot of those categories are either closed or just doing, online pickup. The grocery anchored centers obviously have been very busy. So, in some of those cases, there's been a need to actually update or increase some of the maintenance just due to the velocity of customers. So it really depends on center by center. And, each day we have kind of a meeting, what's going on, what's the things that we need to address. And again, it's very buckets. It's operation. And then, as you mentioned, working with lenders, ensuring, we're looking at, hey, are we making our debt service coverage ratio on certain debts associated with properties? So again, it's sort of, where our role has been investments, we've been shifting more to the asset management.
Sure.
And I think a lot of groups are, the guys in the acquisition disposition arena are shifting to give a hand because we can use the analytical skills.
Well, it's putting that puzzle together again, as you were talking about on the acquisition side. Right?
Yeah, and where the property management folks don't have the Argus and underwriting experience, and we have to do an updated cash flow for a lender or for our own cash flow needs, we're lending a hand with property management, so we can do a quick analysis of income and expenses with their input.
But we're all having to adapt and pivot. We didn't, 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have thought that we would have to convert to being a multimedia company and shooting videos with Tom Falatko. But like you said, we're all collaborating. Everybody's working together to try to figure out how, while you're partners with your tenants, we're partners. Information we put out there is valuable to our partners, on everybody trying to figure out how to work through this crisis. You were very active through the last depression in 08 and 09. Ross Cooper uses a term called retail Darwinism, which I think is a good term. There's just natural evolution of retail. When we come out of the other side of this, what do you think the retail market will look like? Winners, losers, and where do you believe the opportunities will be?
Yeah, well, I think, we will come out of this like we've done in other situations, if it's 9/11 or the Great Recession. But there will be changes. But I think the number one thought I have is, we're social animals. I think all of us would enjoy getting back into the work environment, the office environment with our colleagues, where we have great, relationships, I call them, professional friends. You miss your colleagues, you miss the interaction, the collaboration. I mean, we're doing it, but it's not as walking down the hall. So I think that in terms of socialization, we're going to come back. People want to engage. People enjoy going to restaurants. So I think those experiential retailers will come back. It's funny. I was reading an article in Bloomberg about how this will change, and I think these interactions, Zoom they're becoming more normal, but I think people are still want that direct interaction. So part of retail is experiential. So I think those aspects will come back. Maybe people will get more used to still, maybe there will be an uptick on online presence of commodity items. People are getting used to ordering their groceries and having delivered, but still that's problematic. We've tried that and we've been, disappointed with that. So I think, I think will it come back 100% just exactly? I'd say no. I think that it will give a boost to online shopping, but I think, we're going to go back to, hey, going out with your partner, significant other for that special dinner, or even just I know my kids, there's a local Mexican restaurant or Five Guys. They want to go back. They miss those things. And so I think, as we pass through this, those, people are going to want to go back and do that again.
We are, and you touch on it, and that really kind of segues into the next question about how there is a lot of dialogue about, will shopping habits just change? And I agree with you 100%. We are a social species. I think one thing that this has reinforced is the human interaction and how we just, you need it. I think everybody becomes more productive when they have it. I think whether that's in the workplace, I think even with us and our friends and family, I think you yearn for that beach trip with your family, or going to dinner with a group of friends. And even from a soft goods retail standpoint, yesterday we're needing a bike helmet for my son who's, neighbors cleaning out their garage because they have all this free time on their hands, and he gets this old hand-me-down bike, but we don't have a helmet. And she's like, well, I don't have the luxury to wait for Amazon for 2 days. I want to go to the store right now. Fortunately, Target's open. She goes to Target, walks in Target, gets that helmet.
Yeah.
Oh, video flaw. Anyhow, grabs the helmet, grabs another $80 worth of stuff we probably didn't need. But there's that need for needing it now, that instant gratification of wanting to have it. And I think it almost goes back to when our country's faced tragedies right after 9/11. They're saying, well, people aren't going to fly the same. New York's not going to build a tower as tall as the Twin Towers ever again. Now you have Freedom Tower. After the Boston Marathon bombing, the first thing Bostonians did was gather in big groups to say, hey, we're not going to have this taken away from our lives. We're going to continue our lives in the way we operate, and we're going to celebrate that because it's been taken away from us, and we tasted that, and we don't. That's not who we are.
Yeah, and it's interesting with Amazon. You point out is, well, we are trying to not go to local stores, and so all of a sudden you can't get something overnight or in 2 days. Even with the Prime, it's going to be a week or 10 days. So I think it does refocus. Do we need this just in time, or is it okay to wait a little bit? There are examples, like you said, hey, we need a bike helmet because we want to go out and go biking, or same thing, we've got this new puppy, well, we've got to get some things for the dog. So the pet store is open from 10 to 5, so you can go and get up in there. But then you realize, well, maybe I don't need this overnight. So it is again, I think it's changing perception a little bit. Even we're seeing it. And to your point about socialization, I see it with my children. They miss their school friends, and they're doing Zoom calls. But this morning, my son said, well, I just missed playing basketball.
Sure. My kids are spending less time on social media.
Yeah.
They're going out and grabbing a friend and walking 6 feet apart, or going out in the backyard with their siblings and kicking the soccer ball or playing volleyball, something of that nature. So, Tom, you've always been a huge sounding board for us. Even when we were just getting started, we can't thank you enough. You were very open when we were just rolling out what we do today years back, and you've always been a great conduit for us on just giving your thoughts on the industry, maybe deals we're working on, or making introductions to people. This last piece we're going to discuss is the common area. This is really kind of where you get your laundry out there. Okay, you can touch a little bit on you and maybe a funny or fun experience in the past. Hey there.
Sorry.
You've attended a lot of ICSCs in your career. What is the most memorable or embarrassing thing that has happened to you at an ICSC that you can recall?
Well, it didn't happen to me, but it was the funniest story at an ICSC. We were at a meeting, and this was in Recon in Vegas, and it was an early morning meeting, and I'm sure you've been in some, and people were sweating and clearly had maybe not gotten a full night's sleep. And this one individual was talking, and one of the other people in the group, it was a big table of 8 people, stopped him and asked him to stick out his tongue. And the guy that was speaking was sort of taken aback, and the guy egged him on, and he said, stick out your tongue, stick out your tongue. And so the reluctantly the guy did it, and he said, "I just had to ask. I thought I noticed glitter on your tongue," and sure enough, he had some glitter on his tongue, and so that kind of ended the meeting.
Was that Ryan McArdle? It wasn't Ryan
I
McArdle.
I didn't want to bring bust
appreciate
Ryan
that.
up, but
Well, look,
but that was probably the funniest thing, and
that's
everyone
unbelievable.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories that come out of ICSCs are pretty priceless. Well, thank you for joining us today on the Palomar Perspective. Always love your insight. Super valuable, and I think very, very real for the situations that everybody's dealing with. Hope you and the family stay safe and healthy. If you're watching this and would like more information or continue the conversation with the Palomar Group guys, you can reach us through our website, emails, or reach out to a Palomar team member. Tom, you're one of the best guys in the industry. Thanks for your time this morning and your insight on what you're seeing today.
Well, great. Glad to participate. And as always, I think this is informative, and I appreciate you guys doing this and sharing information across our industry. I think it is helpful to share the experiences we're all going through right now.
Yes, sir. All right, buddy.